Welcome, foolish mortals. I am your host, 1000th Ghost, and we're here today to talk about Wonder Woman 84. Now, Wonder Woman 84 was released in theaters limitedly around the country and on HBO Max on Christmas Day. So everybody's had about 4 days to watch it because it's impossible to talk about this movie without giving spoilers. So this will be spoiler heavy, um, but there's just no other way around it. I mean, what plot there is hard to explain as it is. So, Wonder Woman 84 is um, once again directed by Patty Jenkins. Forgot there for a second. And it stars Gal Gadot and Chris Pine as Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. Um, and it also adds Pablo Pascal as Maxwell Lord. He plays the Mandalorian at the moment to much better effect. And also Kristen Wiig from Saturday Night Live and the Ghostbusters reboot as Barbara Maneuver or Cheetah, as she eventually becomes. So the story opens very oddly. First of all, let me say, I really enjoyed the first Wonder Woman movie. I thought it was easily the best of the DCEU movies. At that time, there'd been Superman and Batman versus Superman, and Aquaman was coming, and Justice League. And I really enjoyed Wonder Woman. I thought it was well done. I understood why they had to move it from World War II to World War I to not interfere with Captain America and have too many comparisons with that. Thought the action was great. It was well written. Chris Pine and Gal Gadot seemed to be work really well together. Had great chemistry. I don't know what happened in between the last. Then it was 2017, I believe. Here it is, 2020, and the magic is gone. Now, if you really enjoyed this movie, that's great. More power to you. I just could not. I couldn't do it. I believe the plot is convoluted. It feels like the entire movie needed a rewrite. It's 2.5 hours long, and that's about a half hour too long. You could have probably trimmed 45 minutes out of this movie, and it would have been crisp and clean and probably much better. But as it is, the movie starts in Themyscira again. This time we see some sort of version of the Amazonian Olympics. And Wonder Woman is about 10 ish, maybe 12 at most. I don't think that high. And she is competing against full grown women, full grown Amazonians. And she's doing pretty well. Doesn't appear she's really using any of the powers that we would have seen her have. She's just really good. And if she's using them, she's using them subconsciously. But almost toward the end of her event, she gets a little cocky and knocked off her horse. And she sees a river, dry riverbed that she can slide down, and that'll save her time and she can catch up with her horse. So that's the smart thing to do, right? You're trying to win, go. So she takes that and does in fact get to the end of the race first. But before she can throw her javelin in order to win, she stopped. And honestly, I couldn't tell you. Talvia, I can't remember her name, stops her and says that she does not deserve to win because she cheated. Now, I don't think it's a cheat, it's a shortcut. And then she goes on to explain that you shouldn't take shortcuts in life. Life is not about shortcuts. Life is about the journey. Life is about getting there and getting there fair and square. Now, okay, that's nice. This never, ever, ever comes back up again. This is the first 10 minutes of the movie. And I mean, I guess you could sort of say at the end of the movie she has to make a choice and decide not to take the shortcut. But she doesn't remember this moment or say, when I was a little girl, I had this happen and I chose this path. She never says that. So this entire 10 minutes is just a waste of time and money. Then the next shot starts in 1984 in Washington, D.C. at a mall where these guys are going to perform a jewel robbery inside the mall. So they go about their business of doing that, but they know that the jewelry is actually a front and that they really are selling in the back is a whole bunch of antiquities and stolen artifacts and things like that from different civilizations around the Mediterranean Sea. Wonder Woman, of course, comes to stop them, and this is actually a really fun little sequence. Shows her flying around, saving a couple kids, of course, beating up the bad guys easily. But, you know, this is how the movie should have started. I've seen recently that Patty Jenkins was asked by Warner Brothers to cut one of those two openings. And she said she couldn't do it because they're both integral to the plot. Well, the first one isn't at all. And the second one is only barely involved. After the robbery, the FBI has a whole bunch of artifacts on their hands they don't know what to do with, and they don't know what they are. So, of course, where do they turn in Washington, D.C.? They turn to the Smithsonian, where Diana happens to have been working for the past few years. And we're not really sure what she was doing before this because it's been 70 years since World War I. There are some pictures that show that she may have been involved in World War II, and that the woman who helped her pick out the dress in the first Wonder Woman comes to America in what looks like the 50s. It's hard to tell, but that's how we see the passage of time, is through a couple little pictures in her background. The FBI brings these, and one of the people they want to look at them is a new hire whose name is Barbara. Now, Barbara is the atypical 80s. She's just, she's so sad and ugly, and she wears fluffy clothes, and her hair's a mess, and she wears big glasses, and nobody notices her, and boo-hoo. Yeah. It's the same thing we've seen in 80s movies forever. And they may have been going for that. I don't know. But they play it to an extreme. Literally, people ignore her. She drops some stuff on the ground. Nobody helps pick it up except Diana. The person who just hired her 2 weeks ago doesn't remember her name, but suddenly remembers that she needs her to help with this FBI stuff. It's very convoluted. And of course, Diana tries to be her friend because that's who Diana is. She's a nice person. And so's Barbara. Barbara, even though she's been abused by people, not possibly physically, but definitely emotionally, still, tries to make friends. And she sees Diana as someone, she'd like to be like. Pretty, popular, smart, all the things she believes she's not. But then we move to the MacGuffin of the entire movie, which is never explained at all, really. It is a rock. You've probably seen it in the trailers. It's about that big, and it's pointy. It looks like some geode crystals or something. And it has Latin writing around it. And basically what it says is, make a wish. So, obviously nobody, knows what this is, because apparently nobody else except her and Diana understand Latin, which in the Smithsonian is hilarious. But anyway, so unknowingly, Diana, it says, ask for your heart's fondest wish or something like that. And so she thinks about Steve and how she would like him to be back. She knows it's not possible, but she would like that. And then a few minutes later, Barbara grabs it and says she wishes she could be like Diana. Powerful, strong, smart, beautiful. People would notice her. And then there's, this wind that shows that the wish is in the process of coming true or coming true. This is when we're introduced kind of to the villain of the piece, whose name is Maxwell Lord, played by Pablo Pascal. And he's a weird cross between a televangelist, J.R. Ewing, and what they think Trump was like in 1984, I think. He's got the blonde hair that sticks up weirdly, and he always wants more. He's never happy with what he has. But inside, he's a giant fraud who is trying to sell oil rights to land there's no oil on. And he's been stringing this guy along in a pyramid scheme, or a Ponzi scheme, and he's finally figured out. But somehow, we're not told this either, he's figured out about this wishing stone. And it's never talked about how he knows where it is, or how he knows that store had it, or if he hired the guys to steal it. But he now knows that it's at the Smithsonian. So he gets himself a tour by promising to become a big sponsor of the museum. So they give him a tour, and he sees that Barbara is the one who has the object. That night, there's going to conveniently be a party for him to announce his sponsorship and, be the man of the hour. Diana doesn't go to those things, but she decides to go to this one because she's concerned about Barbara and about the peace and a couple other little things. Barbara, the effect of the wish starts on her, and she doesn't need her glasses anymore. She wears this tight, form-fitting dress that looks pretty good on her. She gets her hair done, and she goes to the party. And because she asked for it, suddenly every man, and literally every man, stops, looks at her, ogles her, makes some sort of comment to her, and in some cases later in the movie actually try and rape her, because that's what men do in 1984 apparently when they see a pretty girl. Now, it could have been the effect of the wishing stone, I guess, but it's made pretty clear that men are shit, and they're always going to try and rape her, and not, it's dumb. So eventually Max gets the stone, and he doesn't make a wish for just a wish. He wishes to become the stone itself. That way he can grant wishes, and as we find out, the stone takes something from you when you make the wish. So it gives him the ability to be the stone and say you wanted a complete set of 12 back Star Wars figures mint on card. You make that wish, and he decides that he's going to take 10 years of your life. And that's the trade. You don't know what you traded. You just think you made a wish, and you go about your business. It's after this that we're introduced to a guy who comes up to Diana and starts talking to her like he knows her. But of course he doesn't. It's this tall guy, good-looking guy, dark hair. Kind of looks like Chris Pine if Chris Pine was a little taller. But he convinces her that he is Steve Trevor. And as soon as he does that, we see him through her eyes. So we no longer see this actor, who conveniently is also called Chris, except it's with a K. In the credits, he's listed as Handsome Man. He's also the star of several Hallmark Christmas Story movies, which plays something at the end. Anyway, so now we see her and him together. They go back to Handsome Man's apartment, and he's been cleaning all day because apparently the guy's kind of a slob. Steve Trevor is still trying to figure out how our world works. Doesn't explain how he got to the party, anything like that. If he had money, if he took a taxi. We don't know anything about Handsome Man. Does he have a family? Does he have a job? He goes on this adventure for a week or so with Diana. We don't know if he even has a job still. More than that, they don't ask his permission. So what you have is Chris Pine's spirit comes back and inhabits the body of Handsome Man. But he doesn't ask for permission to do anything. And we're never told what happens to Handsome Man's spirit. Is it pushed aside? Is he still awake inside his own mind, trying to take control back? And this kind of comes up a little bit because, of course, it's been 70 years. So Diane has been pining for Steve, if you get it. Anyway, they have sex. I don't think this would have went over as well if it would have been Diana inhabiting some other woman's body and Steve just decided to have sex with her without consent. However, it's never brought up. We never have to deal with the whole you're not you, and I'm putting you in these horrible, desperate situations, and you're getting shot at and thrown around, and when this guy wakes up, he's going to be hurting. It's going to be sad. But eventually, Diana figures out what the stone is, but she doesn't give any reasoning how it was created or why. Basically, she kind of says it was the Amazonians' version of Loki, without actually using the L word to enrage Marvel and or Disney. And then they just kind of drop it. That's it for a little while. And then they decide that that Max Lord is going to go visit a gentleman in Cairo who's known as the King of Oil. And they need to stop him, because if he gets to him and he convinces him to do the wish or whatever, at this point they don't know that Max is the stone. So I'm not sure what they thought they were going to do. Anyway, so they go to steal what I believe is a Vietnam era or Korean War era plane, jet plane. And Steve just sits in there and starts flipping buttons like he knows what he's doing, and starts the engine, taxis, and takes off. Now, when I first watched the movie, this is the point I turned it off. By this time, we're an hour into the movie. There's basically been one action sequence, and that was it. It's been incredibly boring. The plot's gone nowhere. And now, sorry about that, everybody. Sorry, my phone crapped out on me. So I'm going to finish this on my computer, which is probably why it looks like my eye line's weird. Because it is. Someday I'll explain why. But for the moment, let's finish this off. So that's where I turned it off, because I was bored. Then I got home and I was like, meh, I might as well finish this. I need to get a video done of it. There are literally tens of people waiting to hear my opinion. So I turned it back on when I got home. And I'm not making this up. You couldn't make this up. She literally decides, well, okay, so they take off, and of course they're not noticed. The Smithsonian apparently has its own airport where it keeps fully fueled and armed planes sitting on the tarmac waiting to be stolen at any minute, or borrowed by a member of, staff. So they take off, and of course they're going to scramble to try and catch them. They may shoot at them. So Diana decides, well, there's one thing they could do, because, Steve doesn't understand radar yet. They could become invisible. Yes. It says she's been trying to figure out how they've kept Themyscira invisible to the world for all this time. So she rubs her hands together, kind of a Dragon Ball-esque move, and then she touches the plane, and the plane becomes invisible. It's so cheesy. It's horrible. It's well beyond this movie. I would not have expected this at all. Then it just happens to be 4th of July, apparently. And so there are all these fireworks going off around the Capitol, which apparently Steve Trevor has never seen fireworks, because he's really freaked out about them, and he decides that he wants to get a closer look. So they fly through the fireworks that are exploding all around them. Now you want to say, well, don't they hit the plane? Well, no, of course they don't hit the plane. That in the movie. They do kind of fly through the tail of them. And so it's just sad. Anyway, so Max Lord gets to Cairo, however he got there, and he meets with the oil man, king of oil. And he gets him to make a wish that what he really wants is his people to have their land back and for all the foreigners to be gone. Now, what this means in Cairo is very hard to tell because Egypt has been back and forth between, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the British, the French, the Germans, all this time. So I'm not sure what actually it was supposed to do, but it creates a giant super wall, kind of like the Great Wall of China, around Cairo. I don't get it. They don't really explain it very well as usual. And of course, Diana and Steve get to Cairo from Washington, D.C. on one tank of gas in a 1950s-ish, possibly 60s plane. It's just a joke over and over. So Max Lord pretty much has what he wants. He decides to take all the oil. The guy laughs at him. Instead, he takes his entire security team as well as his oil. And this gives them excuse to have a car chase because every Marvel and DC movie now has to have car chases where cars flip over forwards. Honestly, I don't know what movie started that. I seem to remember a Terminator movie where a bus did that first before they did it in The Dark Knight. But I don't know who's to blame for that, but I really hate it. It's almost as bad of a cliche as now whenever our characters are sitting in a car talking, you know that any second they're going to get T-boned by somebody who's running a red light or something. So this is where Diana finds out what her wish is costing her. It's actually costing her her powers. And she's getting slightly weaker. Bullets actually hurt her, which she seems freaked out about. And her and Steve take on this convoy of guys. She does defeat them still pretty easily because, she's still Wonder Woman no matter what. And then it just kind of stops again. And the movie does this several times where it just screeches to a halt as if we've ended a chapter or something. Meanwhile, back in DC, Barbara's been trying to research where this rock came from. And they call her from Cairo, or just outside Cairo, where she fills them in that she's not really sure where it's been, where it is, or where it came from, but she knows where it's been. It was with Hannibal. It was with Caesar. It was with the Aztecs. It's been around. And she says the most interesting thing is no matter where it's been, that civilization has collapsed for no reason whatsoever, which I think in Rome's case would be kind of hard to explain. I'm pretty sure there's a several thousand-page book called The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire that would explain why the Roman Empire fell. As to why the Carthaginians fell, that was pretty easy. The Romans killed them and wiped them off the face of the earth pretty much, and salted their land so they could never grow anything there again. Why the Aztecs or the Mayans collapsed is still kind of a mystery, but now it seems to be climate related. So it's not that we don't know this. Of course, the climate thing they wouldn't have known in 1984, which you have to constantly remind yourself this isn't 1984, because they don't go out of their way to really talk about the 80s much. So she says, okay, I've got this guy, he's an Aztec. He's got a book. The book will explain everything about where it came from and its powers and everything. And Diana says, great, we'll meet you there. And literally, before Barbara can drive from the Smithsonian to wherever this guy lives in Washington, D.C., Barbara and Steve and Diana have flown back from Cairo and meet her there. So anyway, they find out about that its power lies within the wish itself, and that the only way to destroy it is to give the wish back and say, I renounce my wish. This takes the power away and you'll return to whatever you were. So if Barbara says, I renounce my wish, she'll lose the power she's gained from Diana and go back to the way she was. If Diana says, I renounce my wish, Steve will, die again, but she'll get her powers back. And of course, she doesn't want to do this. She doesn't feel it's necessary. Steve is the voice of reason and says, look, I've lived a long life. We need to do this. We have to stop this. This is getting out of control. So they decide the only way to do it is, now that Max is the stone, that if they can get him to renounce the wish, that might mean that all the wishes will stop. Meanwhile, you know how many meanwhiles I've said in this? If I knew how to do it, I'd put a meanwhile detector back, a clock right here in this little corner. It would say ding every time, because this just goes on and on and on. Like I said, it's 2.5 hours, and there's just no real clear plot for most of the movie. It's running around. Like, the whole Cairo thing was useless and could have been cut. You would have saved millions of dollars in CGI. Don't get me started on the CGI. Dear God, it's bad. It's really bad. But meanwhile, Max has decided he's going to go meet with Ronald Reagan. Now, not necessarily Ronald Reagan, but it's 1984. This guy looks like Reagan, kind of talks like Reagan. And what is going on in the world is now the Soviets have recognized this new country that appeared out of nowhere in the middle of Egypt. And of course, we're backing Egypt because they're on our side in the Cold War. And it's starting to make tensions rise a little bit. So, of course, what does the Ronald Reagan of 1984, the horrible warmonger that got us into a 20-year-long war we should never have been in? No, he didn't do that at all. Anyway, he wants more nukes. A lot more nukes. And he wants them placed, like right now. So nuclear weapons just appear all over Europe. And of course, what did the Soviets do? They freak out. They're getting all mad. They're going to launch missiles. And then Max Lord looks at clearly super classified material that's just sitting on boards in the Oval Office, which of course is, actually I don't think that the Oval Office is a skiff. It might be, but I don't think so. And what it shows is a satellite system. Now, what Max's problem is he's figured out what his wish has cost him, and it's costing him his health. So the more wishes he grants, the sicker he's becoming. So he needs to grant more wishes all at once, so he can take people's health and take their organs and that kind of thing. But he can't figure out how to touch enough people all at the same time, as he puts it. So what this satellite, as it's been explained to Ronald Reagan, is that it uses some sort of particles to interfere with all television transmissions across the planet and radio transmissions. And that by doing this, these particles actually touch you. And so you're touching them. Can you reach out and feel your 5G? Right there it is. Oh, no, this is stupid. This is not how particles work. This is not how radio waves work. This is not how television signals work. But again, in this movie, it doesn't matter. So basically, in order to get all the nukes, Max Lord has taken all of Ronald Reagan's power. The entire power of the presidency, his men, the military, everything. And he's decided he wants to be taken to this signal, so he can reach out to the satellite and touch the Earth all at once, which is just creepy. But this movie's kind of creepy. A subplot I've completely forgotten because there are so many of them is his kid. He has a child who, for no reason whatsoever, is Chinese. We assume his mom is Chinese, but we don't have any clue because she's completely out of the picture. We don't even know who watches him most of the day. He shows up randomly in the movie, and then he's just foisted upon whatever assistant is around. Because Max thinks he's doing everything for his son. He's really doing it for himself. But he tells himself and he tells his son that he's not a loser and he's doing this for him and he wants to be more powerful for him. Then he can spend more time with him. Then he can be a better father. And his kid keeps saying, all I want is you, Daddy. All I wish for is, and then he stops him and he says, don't waste your wish like that. Never waste your one wish like that. So, Dad of the Year, with all of Reagan's power, decides to go out of the White House. And, of course, Diana, since she works at the Smithsonian, knows somebody who is now working at the White House. So they get a behind-the-scenes tour, and Max Lord and his group of guys, you've probably seen it in the trailer, walk out into a hallway. And this is where Diana and Steve have that big fight that's in what looks like a hotel corridor, which is actually the White House, and beat everybody up and try and stop Max from leaving on Marine One so that he can go touch everybody. I'm sorry, this is getting long. I swear we're close to the end. This is how I felt during the movie. Anyway, this is when Barbara comes back in. And Barbara has disappeared after she's figured out that she's going to have to give up her powers. And she doesn't want to. So she's decided the way to not do that is to save Max from Diana and Steve. And so there's a battle between Diana and her. And Diana finds out that she's more vulnerable than she thought. And she loses the battle. Max Lord gets away. Steve's hurt. Barbara gets on Marine One with him, and they go off to probably what looks like Puerto Rico or something like that. It could be Hawaii. I don't know. They don't say where stuff is. They just get there magically, super duper fast. So they have a conversation, Steve and her, about she has to let him go. She can't be selfish. It reminded me a lot of the speech that Santa Claus gives his son in the Santa Claus 1, that he can't think of just himself, that he needs to think of everybody in the world. And that's pretty much what Steve says. So Diana decides to give him up. And I renounce my wish, and she backs away and starts running down the street, and we don't see Steve ever again. She starts getting her powers back, but first she decides that she needs an extra special something because we need new action figures for this movie. Now, everybody has seen the figures that McFarlane's done of Wonder Woman in that stupid gold armor that is on the posters and everything, and everybody's like, oh, look, it is so 1984, it's just beautiful, beautiful. No, it's stupid. It's apparently the armor of an Amazonian warrior who, when Themyscira was put into the Dark Ages, stayed out to fight the horrible evil men who wanted to rape and kill all of them. And she's shown being surrounded by Vikings. What the Vikings were doing so far south, they might have been Vandals, I guess. It's hard to tell. But they're beating on her, and somehow they never found her, but they did find her armor. And Diana has it now. And that's that armor she's wearing, is that gold thing. Well, another thing Diana learns how to do in this movie is she learns how to fly in an unnecessarily long, like, I don't know. I honestly don't know how long it was. It could have only been 5 minutes, but it felt like 10. Of her trying to figure out how to fly, how to rope lightning, how to rope clouds with her lasso of truth, and that never makes anybody tell the truth in this movie. And she learns how to fly. She tries spinning it like Thor, flying from lightning bolt to lightning bolt like Thor. And eventually she just figures out she can fly, sort of like Superman. In fact, she flies just like Superman. There's a couple spots in this movie that are very reminiscent of Superman 78. And a couple of them were pretty cool. But really, that wasn't needed. We already knew she could fly. We knew that from Justice League. We knew that from Batman versus Superman. We didn't need to be shown it again. It's like when they keep showing us the deaths of Martha and Bruce Wayne over and over, or Uncle Ben dying in Spider-Man. We get it. We understand. New people catch up. You're just going to have to catch up. Wonder Woman can fly. And apparently make things invisible by touching them. She did lose her coffee cup, though, so there is that. So she puts this armor on and flies to the base, wherever it is. And Barbara's there, and on the plane, Max asked her what she really, really, really wants. And she said she wants to be an apex predator. She wants to, be something nobody's ever seen before. Well, we already know she's got her wish, so I don't know where she gets this extra wish from. Of course, he's the stone. He gets to do whatever he wants. He's the big Jafar genie. That's what I kept thinking about, too, is when Jafar made himself a genie. Anyway, so they go and they take over. They go into this war room that reminded me a lot of Terminator 3 at the end, a communication bunker that is kind of linked to everything across the world. And he reaches out again, somehow, beams, whatever. And he starts asking people to wish. Wish for what you want. What is your heart's desire? What do you want, really, in life? And some people make nice wishes. I'd like $1 million. Okay, great. That sounds wonderful. People randomly around the world ask for nuclear weapons. Iraq has nuclear weapons. Egypt has nuclear weapons. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. It looks like Afghanistan has nuclear weapons. The Russians have tons of nuclear weapons. There's an Irish guy and a British woman in a little tea place in England, and she yells at the Irish guy, "I wish they'd send all of you home, round you up and send you back where you came from." And he looks at her and says, "I wish you'd die right now." And she grabs her heart and starts dying of a heart attack right then. Meanwhile, out on the street, cops came out of nowhere and arrest some guy who might be Irish, I guess. Not sure how they were telling that, if they were just going to take the redheaded people and ship them off, or how that was going to work. But, people make a lot of selfish wishes because that's what people do. That's who we are. Self-serving, and we don't think things through. Plus, we don't understand we're about to be stolen from. And so Max, who really looks like he's dying by now, starts saying, "I take your health, I take your essence, I take your lungs, I take your heart." And he basically repairs himself completely. Meanwhile, outside, a poor man's Saint Seiya figure, Gal Gadot, in her gold outfit, drops down and then takes out the security guys. They go out of their way to show that she doesn't kill people. She just hurts them, which she's done past in this movie. She's gone out of her way to help people not get hurt, which is great. That's Wonder Woman. That's Superman. That's what they do. And then we see what we're going to call Island of Dr. Moreau, Brenda, Barbara, whatever. Oh my God. I mean, in 2019, we were forced to have Cats, the musical, come to theaters with Taylor Swift and a whole bunch of people who shouldn't have been in a movie in leotards. and CG buttholes. This was worse. Suddenly, of course, it's not bright day anymore. It's mid-afternoon to twilight, so that, the CG is hidden behind the darkness. I've really got to wrap this up, guys. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. But that's what this movie does. It rambles. It gets to you. So there's a big CG battle. Of course, Diana beats her up, but not before we're shown that outfit she's wearing is completely useless. She has those big wings, and they fold around her, and Barbara's claws just slice right through them and just cut them up like they're tinfoil-ish things. It's bad. So, of course, how do you defeat cats? With water. Yes, with water. So their battle ends, and Diana goes inside and confronts Max Lord, who's now pretty much gone insane. He's actually put himself in the center of the beam, kind of like in Tron. And he's granting wishes like constantly. You can hear them. And Diana starts talking, and she talks about how this isn't right, and you have to renounce your wish, and you're hurting people, and things are going to go wrong, and you don't understand. And Max turns around and says, I'm not going to listen. I need more. And she says, I wasn't talking to you. And it shows at the bottom of his foot that the lasso of truth is wrapped around him. And so now she's connected to everybody on the planet too. And she's actually talking to the planet. And through the lasso, she helps Max see his son. And his son is walking around somewhere near the Watergate building by the looks of it, and is surrounded by chaos. Meanwhile, the Soviets have decided to go ahead and launch, because all these weapons have just shown up near them. So they do. And, of course, we return or launch. So the world has less than 4 minutes. The movie seems to have another half hour. It doesn't really, though. And she finally starts convincing the world that they need to renounce their wishes. And one by one, the people who asked for power or extra land or more nukes renounce their wishes, and it flips to Reagan saying, I renounce my wish. And all those nukes he wished into existence disappear. Now, this would not have stopped the real missiles we already had that would have been launched from going, but we're just going to ignore that and say that as soon as he renounced his wish, all the nukes went back to where they were supposed to be. Same with the Russians. Max finally renounces his wish because he sees that what he really wants is to be with his son. And so somehow he gets Marine One to fly him back to Washington, D.C. from wherever. And he has this heartfelt, moment with his son. And, I just wanted to be with you. And we don't know what happens to him. Clearly, they would not have taken him back. He would be arrested for numerous felonies. Just, I don't know. I don't know. Barbara is last seen laying in Puerto Rico or wherever they are, and she's back to her normal self-ish. We don't know if she's lost her powers or if she's lost, her Diana-ness. That's a real word. But she's no longer Dr. Moreau Barbie. So it kind of just ends there. The next scene is basically a Christmas Hallmark movie, which is perfect for Chris with a K, as he stars in several of them. And this is the gentleman called Handsome Man, who took over, who Steve took over. Now, of course, Diana knows what he looks like, and she actually runs across him accidentally in, some Christmas fair. So it's obviously been time, because remember, it was 4th of July last time we saw her. And, she's kind of flirty, but not quite. And he's the same, but it doesn't show that they're going to get together or anything like that. And it just kind of shows Diana wandering off and, that's basically the end of the movie. Now, there is a stinger scene that was also completely useless and random. But I loved it. I won't say I didn't. A woman is walking through a market square somewhere, and randomly, for no reason, an electrical wire snaps, and an electrical pole just falls out of the ground. And this woman reaches up with one hand and grabs it and pushes it up until a couple guys can come over and grab it and move it. And it was going to crush a baby and her mother. And so she runs over and thanks the woman. And you think it's Gal Gadot because she's got long dark hair. She's wearing the blue capey thing. Nope. It's Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman. Turns around, looks at the screen, friggin' just as beautiful as ever, those deep blue eyes, and says, "No problem. I've been doing this for a long time." And then the movie ends. Okay. What I liked about the movie, Gal Gadot and Chris Pine, they were great. Anytime they're on screen together, the movie seems to work. Everybody else is a waste in this movie. Everybody. Pablo Pascal is just stay on The Mandalorian. He actually was in a pilot episode for a Wonder Woman television show for the CW that never went anywhere. So it's funny that he's back. Kristen Wiig is just, I don't know. I don't know why they keep trying to make her happen. She wasn't horrible, but she didn't have anything to do. And they changed Cheetah's origin story so badly. I mean, they kind of had to. Her original origin story was basically Black Panther. They're not going to do that, not with Chadwick dying and everything. I didn't understand why they didn't use any 80s music. They're owned by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers has a huge amount of 80s music they could have put on the soundtrack. Instead, not. It was weird. But in the CGI, there was a couple running scenes that are just bad. A couple scenes that had to be put into night so that you would believe that the CG was real. It reminded me a lot of the first Harry Potter movie when they went into the bathroom to fight the troll and suddenly it got darker for no reason whatsoever. Yeah, a lot like that. But I will say that they did get me. Through most of December, I wasn't sure I was going to watch this movie or not. And I said to myself, I wish they'd mark down HBO Max. Then, you know what? I would probably get it and watch the movie. And a couple days before, they dropped a 20 or 30% for 6 months off, as long as you paid ahead. And I did. I got my wish, and I went ahead and paid. And after watching this movie, all I can really say is I will relinquish my wish. Anyway, thanks for hanging out. I know it's been 45 minutes or so. If you stayed for the whole thing, thank you. If you didn't, and you stayed for what you did, thank you anyway. I know this has been a long one, but please subscribe, like, pass on. Please put comments in the bottom. And if you liked it, please tell me and tell me why. I'd love to see, maybe I just went into it hoping for too much after the first one. I probably will rewatch it just to make sure of my feelings. But, please put stuff down in the bottom. Share it with your friends, family. Even if you just want to hate, troll me, please do. But till then, thank you guys. Bye.